Hello, this is my daily test into the internet verse. Someone hear me?
Good morning. I can hear you okay.
Thank you so much.
All right, good morning, all. Can I just check and see if we have a court reporter with us?
Yes, we do. Thank you.
Good morning, Harriet. Okay, in that case, we will go back on the record in hearing, in the evidentiary hearing and proceeding 23A-0242E, which is the matter of Public Service Company of Colorado's 2024 to 2026 Transportation Electrification Plan. Let me see if there are any preliminary matters before we start the day. Mr. Dixon.
Yes, I'd like to announce that UCA will waive cross-examination of Mr. Madsen.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you, Mr. Dixon. Any other adjustments or other matters? Okie dokie. With that, I show we are up to Environmental Justice Coalition Witness Madrid. Hello, Mr. Madrid.
Good morning, Commissioner.
Good morning. Lovely boat you have there.
Thank you. Not mine, but it's a great background shot.
Little different than the snow. Okay, if you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And are you alone as you testify today?
Yes, I am.
And is anyone communicating with you in any way?
No one.
And if that changes, will you please stop and let me know?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Turn it over to you, Mr. Ragonen.
Thank you, Commissioner Gilman. Mr. Madrid, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Great. Good morning to you.
Morning.
Can you please state and spell your name for the record?
Juan Roberto Madrid, JuanRobertoMadrid.
And you're testifying on behalf of the Environmental Justice Coalition in this proceeding.
That is correct.
And Green Latinos is one of the organizations in the Environmental Justice Coalition, correct?
That is correct.
What is your, and you work for Green Latinos?
Yes, I am employed by Green Latinos.
What is your position with Green Latinos?
I am the Colorado Clean Transportation and Energy Policy Advocate.
And you filed answer testimony on August 30th, 2023, and that's marked as hearing exhibit 1701.
Yes.
You also filed cross-answer testimony on November 17th, 2023, and that's marked as hearing exhibit 1703.
Correct.
You also filed settlement testimony on December 20th, 2023, and that's marked as hearing exhibit 1704.
Correct.
For the record, hearing exhibits 1701, 1703, and 1704 have already been admitted into evidence by stipulation at the beginning of this hearing. And with that, Mr. Madrid is available for cross-examination.
Thank you, Mr. Ragonen. Appreciate it. I have trial staff for 15 minutes.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Gilman. Good morning, Mr. Madrid. My name is Katie McLaughlin, and I represent trial staff in this proceeding. I have a couple questions for you this morning, and hopefully we can get through them fairly quickly. But I'd like to first briefly touch on the company's first TEP proceeding. In that TEP, the commission approved a budget of approximately $108 million. Have you had the chance to read the Affordability Coalition stipulation?
In the first TEP?
So the first TEP, the commission approved a budget of $108 million. My question to you is, have you had the chance to read the Affordability Coalition stipulation in this proceeding?
In this proceeding, yes, I have.
Okay, so you know that the Affordability Coalition is advocating for a TEP budget of $108 million in this TEP proceeding.
Correct.
Okay. Now, the company's most recent semi-annual report shows that they spent less than $40 million during the first TEP. Do you have any reason to dispute that that is what the report says?
I have no reason to dispute that.
So turning back to this TEP, the Environmental Justice Coalition signed on to the non-unanimous settlement agreement, which has a budget of $500 million, correct?
Correct.
And the company is going to recover these expenditures under the TEPA rider, yes?
That sounds right.
And who pays for the TEPA rider?
I believe that is all ratepayers.
And this includes residential customers too?
I believe so.
So you'd agree with me that an increase in the TEPA rider would result in an increase to residential electric bills?
Most likely, yes.
So wouldn't an increase in electric bills place another financial burden on low-income families, whose energy burden, in your words, is already 5 times more than the average Colorado household?
I'm going to have to object. I think Ms. McLaughlin has asked a compound question, so I would request that she build the proper foundation to ask quite a few questions she asked there.
Ms. McLaughlin, is it possible to maybe segment what you had brought up?
Yeah, I don't believe that it was multiple questions. It wasn't a compound question. It was a singular question that referenced Mr. Madrid's answer testimony.
Okay, maybe you can try it again so I can hear it again.
Okay. Would you agree that an increase in electric bills places another financial burden on low-income families whose energy burden, in your words, is already 5 times more than the average Colorado household?
No, I would not agree with that.
You would not agree that an increase in electric bills increases energy burden?
Do you have the cost amount of what the average increase is going to be?
So any increase in a bill.
Do you have the amount of the increase or the average amount of the increase that is going to occur through this rider?
I believe there was a bill study, but would you agree that the bills will increase based on the TEPA rider?
I agree that they may increase on the TEPA rider, but I would dispute that those increases are going to cause a undue burden to DIC communities more than the 5-time burden that you said that you listed. I said we already have.
What amount do you believe would impose an undue burden, in your opinion?
I think that varies by customer and by customer usage.
Okay.
There are many factors.
Okay, there are many factors. So if the commission were to weigh electric bill affordability for income qualified and DI customers with the spending here in this TEP, would the Environmental Justice Coalition rank EVs and the TEP above electric affordability?
Repeat the question, please.
Yes, absolutely. So if the commission had to weigh electric bill affordability for IQ and DI customers with the spending in the TEP, would the Environmental Justice Coalition rank EVs and the TEP over electric affordability?
Yes.
Okay, I have no further questions.
Thanks, Ms. McLaughlin. Okay, I think you were it on cross, so we'll go to Commission Counsel.
I have no questions for this witness.
Thanks, Ms. Dundas. Commissioner Plant.
I have no questions either.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Madrid.
Good morning.
Again. I just had a brief questions for you. No, in the inaugural TEP, I believe we had a performance incentive mechanism around at least one equity provision within that TEP. Do you recall that?
I recall that there may have been. I was not involved in that first TEP, but I recall there may have been.
Okay. And that was kind of, at least I was here at the time, a recognition that we really wanted to ensure, especially that income qualified customers and others were able to participate in kind of the electrification of transportation and the many benefits that brings also to the users. So to my understanding, there is not a proposed performance incentive mechanism or kind of other way to incentivize the company to improve equity performance of the plan in the settlement. Are you able to confirm that, and then maybe just elaborate it all on why, what should give us confidence that we'll have good equity progress made within this proceeding if we accepted the settlement, if there is kind of no such incentive for the company?
I don't recall that there is specific language that says there's that requirement. I do know that the last TEP part of, right, I think you're going to the last TEP, there was not as much uptake in usage of those incentives. And I think that part of that, we believe part of that was due to a failed community outreach and education by PSCO. And so given that there would be, we've advocated for more funding for that outreach and education so that community is aware of those incentive programs that they can take advantage of. If you don't know what programs are available to you as a ratepayer, then you don't know how to ask for those, right? And so there's no uptake in that. But if you're aware of those, and with the increase of EV market and with DIC members wanting to partake in the EV industry and take advantage of the air quality improvements and to take advantage of the cost savings of driving an EV, I think having those incentives in there is important for that. We heard from Aaron Kressig yesterday that the early adopters and have been having a good uptake. And when you want that to cross over to the larger majority, you need those incentives to keep that momentum going. And I believe that this signing on to this settlement, the stipulations that are in there give us that and give us in the EJC confidence, and that's why we signed on to the settlement agreement.
Okay. And as I look at the budget under the settlement agreement, are those main outreach efforts that you mentioned specifically into DI communities, are those in the advisory services? Is that where you understand them to come from?
I'm not sure what you mean by the advisory services.
They kind of just have buckets of spending listed for their proposed budget.
That sounds fair. Yep.
Okay. And is there any kind of guarantee or backstop in terms of how much money or effort will be put forth to that specific outreach effort into DI communities?
Well, there are, in our recommendations, there were recommendations that they provide quarterly reports on what that outreach and education looks like, so that they're able to show what that outreach and education is and the dollars spent on that, and to see if more needs to be done.
Okay.
That was in our recommendation.
Okay. Those are my only questions, sir. Turn it over to you, Mr. Ragonin, for any redirect.
Thank you, Commissioner Gilman. Brief redirect here, just on two quick topics. So first, Mr. Madrid, do you recall talking with Ms. McLaughlin about the expanded budget in the settlement agreement?
Yes.
What are the reasons why the Environmental Justice Coalition supports an expanded budget in this case?
We believe an expanded budget in this case benefits the DIC community and income qualified communities by providing those incentives to allow them to take up EV vehicles. Without those incentives, they remain largely out of reach. And once again, the Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities will be left behind in technology and will be left behind. In addition to that, the other tangible benefits are the improvements to air quality. By getting more electric vehicles on the road, we are reducing carbon emissions, we're reducing tailpipe emissions. And we know in Commerce City, in Northwest Denver, in Adams County, right? We know the Front Range is in severe non-attainment violation of ozone. By also adopting these incentives, it's giving us the chance to drive those electric vehicles, save on those costs by driving an EV, and improving the air quality as well. And it's not only improving the air quality for those in DIC and income qualified communities, because the column of air does not just stay above that community. The improvements are to all Coloradans and to the entire Front Range by reducing those air quality emissions. That's the that's the other tangible benefit, and why we believe, I myself as a ratepayer, why I believe it's worth approving the settlement.
And you just talked about the pronounced benefits that income qualified customers, brown, black, and disproportionately impacted communities will gain from this TEP. What barriers do they face in EV adoption?
Current barriers they face in EV adoption are the overall price of the EV, right? So many are working 2 to 3 jobs to be able to afford housing. We all know housing is largely not affordable in the Denver metro area and in Colorado in general. And so the cost burden, if I want to go out, a person wants to go out and buy a new car, they typically save up for that, and they have the capital to provide that down payment. These incentives help bring that, reduce the overall costs. And then by having those incentives up front, you're providing an even more lucrative incentive for those community members to be able to opt in and make EV purchases something that's within their reach.
Thank you, Mr. Madrid. Just one other quick topic here. I just wanted to follow up on a conversation you had with Commissioner Gilman about community outreach in the settlement agreement. Do you recall having that conversation with Commissioner Gilman?
Yes.
I'd like to quickly pull up here Exhibit 121, Attachment A, which is the settlement agreement. And if we could please turn to page 28.
You said 121 or 121 attachment A? Sorry about that.
121 attachment A. And page 20. 28. My apologies. And if we could go down to paragraph 68.9. Now, Mr. Madrid, do you recall this specific provision of the settlement agreement? Starting on paragraph 68.9.
Yes.
So what are the things that public service, according to the settlement agreement, will have to do in regards to community outreach and reporting?
It looks like a description of the progress made in implementing the company's IQDI community engagement outreach plan, description of the engagement, the type of outreach conducted, organizations that have been contacted, communities that they engaged, whether they engaged with a multilingual effort, engagement and outreach budget spent, including a list of the organizations that received funding, the amount of funding that each organization received, and then providing a summary back as part of the IQDI community engagement and outreach process.
And why did the Environmental Justice Coalition support these particular requirements for the company?
We supported these particular requirements because it's not just giving the company the budget and saying, okay, show what, go ahead and tell us how you did. This gives metrics to show how they are engaging, and in part looking at the previous TEP and how that engagement went. This provides, we believe, an opportunity for clearly identifying the type and amount of outreach so that communities are aware and uptake can be increased. When we look at, for example, the advanced clean trucks rulemaking, right? We know that the CDPHE was doing community outreach and education, and their outreach and education, we believed, was lackluster. When you go on a listserv and you try to educate and make the community aware of something, doing it by a listserv is not the way to do it. So often at many of these outreach and community engagement sessions, there might be 8 or 9, maybe 10 people, and half of those would be those of us from the Environmental Justice Coalition. When we got out and we did town halls, we had 91, 101, 76, 59, and 64 attendees. And out of all of those, we had more than 75% that were monolingual Spanish speakers. And we provided Spanish language translation for that, right? So there is a way. We invited CDPHE to come out to those to see, right? How do you get so many people to show up to your town halls where we're giving out the same information that CDPHE was? That's an example of how an organization can provide education and outreach that will really get to the community. And the community was excited, enthused to hear about the programs and the rulemaking itself, and dispelling misinformation as well, right? So it's an opportunity to provide that information and let the community know what's out there. That is why we agreed and we signed on to this settlement, because we believe these provisions provide that guideline and that basis for PSCO to be able to do that in an effective manner. We know that there are DIC community members and IQ members who would like to make the transition, and the assistance would be there. If we take a look at the City of Denver's e-bike rebate program, that's another example of a successful program that is reaching DI and IQ customers, among many others, and there's clear adoption. Without the incentives, there is increased inequity, and it leaves those minority communities left behind once again. That is why we believe that this settlement and these provisions provide the strongest incentives to bring our communities and allow our community members to also participate in uptaking of electric vehicles.
Thank you, Mr. Madrid. No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Madrid. I appreciate your testimony here today, and you are excused, sir.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, next up we have Tesla witness Ehrlich. Sorry, and apologize for the pronunciation ahead of time. Can anyone help me with the proper pronunciation?
That sounded right.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Commissioner.
At first I was confident, and then I kind of mumbled it to make sure I had it right. So apologies if I didn't do a great job. Okay, Mr. Ehrlich, can you please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And are you alone as you testify today?
Yes.
Is anyone communicating with you in any way?
No.
If that changes, please stop and let me know.
Okay, will do.
Okay, I will turn it over to staff counsel for 15 minutes. Oh, no, I'm turning it over to Miss Mandel. Sorry about that.
No problem. Good morning, Mr. Ehrlich. Could you please state your name and spell your name?
William Ehrlich, last name is E-H-R-L-I-C-H.
And by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by Tesla as a staff policy advisor focused on EV charging policy and rates.
And Mr. Ehrlich, are you the same person who caused to be filed in this proceeding, hearing exhibits 300, 301, and 302?
I am.
Any material modifications to those exhibits at this time?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Ehrlich is available for cross-examination.
Thank you. Now I will turn it over to you, Ms. Roach, for 15 minutes.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good morning, Mr. Ehrlich. It's nice to see you again. I would like
Morning.
to talk to you. Good morning. I'd like to talk to you specifically about Tesla's interests in this proceeding. Other than Tesla, which parties specifically want TEP funds to be used for the preemptive distribution system upgrades for DCFC?
Well, all of the settling parties who signed on to the settlement expressed, sort of an official support for the distribution system investments in the modified amounts reflected in the settlement.
Isn't it true that so many parties were opposed to that proposal that the company actually dropped it in its rebuttal case?
I don't think that's an accurate characterization. Obviously, there's a lot of competing priorities, and the company has, and to go back a little bit further, we saw a dramatic change from the company's initial filing to its supplemental direct filing. So, yeah, over the course of the case, the proposal has shifted, and I think where we landed in the settlement is a good place. And there's definitely been some movement over the course of where we started from the initial filing.
Okay, I didn't hear necessarily an answer to my question. So let's grab hearing exhibit 122 and go to page 33.
You said page 33?
Yes, ma'am. And I believe I need lines 10 and 13. So if you look at line 10, doesn't Mr. Eiley explain that the company removed that pecan alternative distribution system because of additional party feedback?
Pending additional party feedback. Could we see the footnote 52? So looks like he's referring to Pauletti's rebuttal in footnote 52.
Let's scroll up and look at the full question here.
Yeah.
So company proposals, if we scroll down probably to the top of page 33.
Oh. I didn't get a chance to read that full question there.
I think what we need is in this section right here.
Okay.
So how about at line 5? Though the company stood behind keeping distribution grid investments in its TEP, the company, through its rebuttal case, lowered the supportive budget for grid upgrades from $1 million. So the company received enough feedback in answer that it decided to remove that program, didn't it? In its rebuttal case. That's what this says.
Well, I think the first lines you pointed to, I think, is a better characterization. Rebuttal case explained that the company still sees a need for the grid upgrades, but was
Yes,
removing
but
the
enough
budget for the
pushback.
investments pending additional party feedback on such removal. And in between the rebuttal case and the settlement, they received that additional party feedback to such a degree that they decided to add that back in. So I think at the point in the case of this testimony, they kind of pushed pause. You're correct. But between this and, you know, the settlement, that additional party feedback, everyone was able to get on the same page and become comfortable. And I think, you know, the details provided in Connie Paletti's rebuttal testimony, I think went a long way to help people get more comfortable. And I know I certainly tried to provide the information that I could from our perspective to support that as well.
Okay, so this program, what is it called now in the settlement when they re-added it?
It's the public DCFC system distribution investments. There's a couple of different iterations, but that's generally how it's being referred to.
Okay, and what is the budget for this program?
In the settlement, it's $30 million.
Now, in this program, there are no specific projects that these investments are slated to fund, are there?
That's correct. In the settlement, the commitment is to provide similar visibility as to what the company provided for the no regrets investments in Connie Paletti's rebuttal testimony attachment. I think it's CLP-2, that shows sort of where these things will be happening on the no regret side. The company didn't have time to do the same thing for the public DCFC, but based on my reading of the settlement and the discussion, is committed to doing a similar type analysis.
Might they not have had time to do the same thing because they actually dropped it in their rebuttal case?
Would they not have had? No, I think they would have needed more time regardless, because in the supplemental direct testimony where we went from initial filing to supplemental direct, where these distribution investments were introduced, you know, there wasn't the detail at that point. So I think it was going to be a timing issue, regardless of I don't think whenever this came into the case, I just don't think the company felt comfortable having to do that sort of analysis on a compressed timeline with everything else that they're having to attend to.
Okay, so were you listening to Ms. Paoletti's testimony where she described the amount of, well, actually, were you listening to her testimony?
Yes, I was.
Okay, did you hear her describe the amount of data and information they have on where DCFC investments might be located?
Yes, I did.
And despite having all that data, they did not identify any locations where that investment might be made in the settlement. Is that correct?
That's correct. I think that she characterized accurately the type of analysis that is necessary, which includes a number of different data sets that are available, but still remains a fairly manual process, and one that requires the expertise of members of the company and probably more specifically Ms. Paoletti's team. The feeders on the network, you know, when you try to do this sort of thing, you're without being, you know, an expert at the company, the feeders are overlapping each other and oftentimes not sort of discretely in specific geographic blocks. So it really is that sort of granular, you need the full map that only the company has visibility into before you can really place those pins and make the best decisions around these investments.
Didn't you provide a map of areas that Tesla had already experienced problems in your testimony?
I did. And if
Have
you
you
want to,
entered any agreements with the company for development in those areas?
what type of agreements?
Anything that would commit you to taking service?
Not to my knowledge at this time. However, I would highlight that the map that we provided is only one half of, you know, what you need to place the feeder investments. Like we did not have visibility into the company's feeder distribution system to specifically identify and propose or recommend feeder upgrades. But with that data that we're providing, as well as other developers, it is our position that the company could accurately and judiciously do this.
So I'm hearing that you haven't made any official requests to take service in those areas identified by your testimony.
We have made.
I would not say an inquiry is the same as a request.
I believe those are capacity checks, and in the case reflected in my testimony, as well as in a discovery question from the County of Denver, City and County of Denver, you know, the capacity checks sent to the company, which they were tracking from May 2022 to August 2023, it was 23 out of 80 DCFC requests did not have capacity. And for requests over a megawatt, the percentage went up. It was 17 out of 42 sites. So that's almost 40% of sites that, based on capacity checks, needed serious expansion. So when you send in a capacity check and you're told it's going to take 2 years, you know.
So Mr. Ehrlich, I'm going to cut you off so that I
Okay.
can get an answer to my question.
Yeah.
You have not made a request for service at any of those areas. It stopped at capacity check.
I don't know off of the top of my head, but
Okay, then let's move on.
the map reflected capacity checks.
Okay, so now Ms. Paletti asked you if you're listening to her testimony. She testified that they have an obligation to serve anyone on these investment feeders. Is that your understanding as well?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so that's not originally what Tesla advocated for in your answer, though, is it?
Would you like to tell me, is there a specific line?
Does this, since we're running on time here, this is what you said, and you can just tell me if it sounds familiar.
Okay.
You said it's paramount that distribution upgrades authorized pursuant to the TEP will benefit fast charging. That sound familiar?
Yes, it does. Is that from maybe
That's from your testimony.
testimony?
Give
Yeah.
you a quote so your lawyer can look it up. Ms. Mandel, that's hearing exhibit 300 at 21-8-9. And here's another one. Does this sound familiar? You said that upgrade investments associated with the pecan alternative may generally benefit large commercial and industrial customer fleets, community solar gardens, and support other BE initiatives. The inclusion of community solar gardens in these investment decisions is outside the scope of this TEP. Did you say that too?
Yes, it did.
So is your concern that investment decisions be limited in scope to the need for DCFC addressed in any way in the settlement?
Yes, it is.
You just said that you agreed with Ms. Paletti's assertion that anyone could take service once these feeders are in place, not just EV related entities. That's true, right?
That's true. Yes.
So how does the settlement address your concern if anyone can take service?
Well, the main reason for the need to do this proactively and have it be on a faster timeline is because the charging stations can get built much faster than, you know, a big box store or other type of commercial customers that would typically need these power levels. So there's not much of a concern if they identify the feeders and we know where there's going to be capacity for charging, that, you know, a commercial customer who is going to take a year to build a building would like front run the capacity that you're trying to build for charging due to the timeline difference.
Okay, so that leads me to my next question about how entities would typically get a high level of power in a place where it's not available right now. Are
Mhm.
you generally familiar with the company's distribution extension policy, sometimes referred to as the line extension policy?
I'm generally familiar. The specifics, I would have to look at the tariff language for the specifics.
Okay. Are you aware that EV charging customers are specifically designated as permanent service customers under that policy?
Yes, I think that would be an important distinction.
Okay. And are you aware that permanent service customers are eligible to receive allowances and credits from the company to reduce the cost of connecting to the grid under the line extension policy?
Yes, I'm familiar with that.
Okay, and are those allowances borne by all of the company's ratepayers? Is that how that is funded?
Well, I'd have to look at the specifics of the Excel line extension policy.
Okay, let's pull it up. Can I get
Yeah, that'd be
hearing
great.
exhibit 420? So this is the whole policy. It's 30 pages long. But
Okay.
let's specifically go to page 27.
Here we go.
If we can turn that a little bit.
Yeah.
So this is the credits that I was talking about. It's true that an upfront credit of 35% is allowed, right?
Yes. Now,
So my
um,
earlier question was, who funds that credit? It's ratepayers, right?
so
I mean, it's
If it-
relatively straightforward. Who funds the credit?
I'm wanting, you know, this is a 30-page document. We're on one page. I'm curious because normally, so agree, this is saying offsite distribution line extensions at 35%. However, I'm curious if in the document there's any sort of net revenue allowance, sort of justification, because normally the reason a line extension is provided is because you're coming in as a permanent customer who's going to be paying electricity rates. So oftentimes it's based on some number of years of revenue that is expected to be paid to the company. So typically the line extension costs are recovered, maybe fronted by ratepayers, but recovered directly from that individual customer. However, this is also, you know, this is a line extension policy where you're connecting to a distribution feeder. You're talking about, you know, an extension onto the property. So this is typically different than, you know, a system expansion, which is, you know, generally a much larger undertaking. And
Okay, so if Tesla wanted to establish a new station
yeah,
with a total capacity of whatever, could be 1 megawatt maybe, you'd receive construction allowances, right?
Yes.
This for the offsite distribution costs, as well as a construction allowance?
Well, I'm not seeing the construction allowance. Is that covered? Are you saying the construction allowance is a different credit?
Yes, it is.
Okay, can we look at that section as well?
I believe we go up, it's on page 27. Or sorry, maybe it's on 28, sorry. Got lost. So my point is you would receive every incentive or allowance or credit that is in this tariff if you were building it on your own. But my question to you is with the company's DCFC investments, your cost would be nothing, right?
Well, no. Okay, here we go. Construction allowance, service lateral, on-site distribution. Okay, so yeah, per kilowatt. Could you ask your question one more time? Thank you for pulling this up. This is helpful.
So the specific amounts that you're going to receive are not essential to my line of questioning. If you were to undertake a project on your own without the company's investments from the settlement, you would be paying a portion of getting power to your site, wouldn't you?
Well, we'll be paying this portion anyways, even if this is, so if the company does the proactive distribution system investments, I expect we would still pay our line extension costs similar to now. However, the system would be able to handle our capacity request. So we would still pay a line extension cost. It's just that, you know, the company would not be in the position to say, you know, this is going to take 2 years and require major system expansion. The system would be ready, but we would still pay the line extension for our specific project.
Okay. I think we're kind of talking past each other here. So let's talk about the other half of Tesla's business. We can take this down. What's the lowest cost model Tesla currently offers?
With or without incentives?
Well, I think it'd be the lowest cost just without incentives, and then we'd apply those incentives to them.
Okay. I don't know off the top of my head. I want to say 40.
I'm pretty sure it's a Model 3. That's the lowest
Yeah.
cost model, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think do you have it? Do you have the number in front of you? Have you looked it up? And it's online.
You think the MSRP for the Model 3 is what?
Probably the standard range.
Okay, the standard range MSRP is probably what?
I mean, can we just look it up? I mean, I don't want to say something inaccurate. I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, are you aware of how many Tesla models are currently eligible for the federal rebates?
I believe it's well, there were some changes at the end of the year, but I think currently it's the Model Y is still fully eligible. The Model 3 was eligible through the end of the year, but it may have been cut in half going forward.
Okay. So the state rebates and the federal rebates, you're not sure if both would apply to any Tesla model?
I'm honestly not sure. I'd spend the entirety of my time thinking about charging. So the vehicle stuff is a little bit, again, I have a sense of the range, but that's sort of
Okay, any Tesla model would be eligible if it met the requirements of the EV rebates that are in this settlement, right?
I believe so. Now
The EV rebates in this case have income qualifications, right, but not caps.
I think that's right. I'd
Okay.
like to just.
That's my last question.
Oh, okay.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Ehrlich.
All right. Thank you.
All right, I only had you, Ms. Roach, so we'll turn it over Commission Counsel for any questions.
No questions for this witness.
Commissioner Plant?
I have no questions either.
I also have no questions, so you are off the hook. But I will give your attorney redirect.
Thank you, Commissioner Gilman. Just a couple of quick questions, Mr. Ehrlich. If you recall, you were asked about a couple of questions about your answer testimony, and basically in that answer testimony, you were discussing that you believed that the public charging focused distribution investments for DCF public charging needed to be primarily focused on public charging. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and then you also filed two sets of testimony after that in favor of the company's proposed investments, distribution system investments in favor of public charging. And I'd like for you to explain why between your answer testimony and the settlement agreement, you became comfortable with supporting the proposed DCFC public charging distribution system investments.
So the details provided in Ms. Paletti's rebuttal attachment, kind of highlighting the analysis they did for the no regrets investments, I thought was very compelling. We have, our data set, which the company also has visibility into where we've made capacity checks. So, as well as from other developers inquiring as well. So, given looking at the no regrets investment analysis, knowing that the company had kept track of where capacity checks were made for public DCFC, it really seemed like they would be able to appropriately and prudently invest in the system to support public DCFC. And I thought that understanding the company needs to serve in customers in the way they do today, and they can't maybe reserve that capacity, given all the various factors, it felt like this was a good way forward.
And Mr. Ehrlich, you referred to Tesla as well as other public charging developers making requests of the company. In that regard, could you please explain to the commission the status of the opening of the Tesla network? Just briefly explain that in terms of what it means for all public charging.
So a very important difference between the past and the future is that the Tesla charging network will be opening this year to all vehicles. So to the degree that Tesla's network continues to expand in Colorado and in public service territory, those charging stations are expected to serve not just Tesla vehicles, but all vehicles. So to the degree that hopefully that was clear and in the record, but it is an important point that the Tesla charging network will not be only serving Teslas going forward. It is currently underway, opening to all auto manufacturers who have agreed to move over to the NAC standard over the course of this year.
And Mr. Ehrlich, you were asked some questions about the details of Tesla's vehicles and the prices and eligibility. And isn't it accurate that that Tesla provided testimony from another witness, Mr. Kurowski, who has a different expertise than you? Could you explain the difference between your areas of expertise? Thank you.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out how to say that, and I clearly didn't figure it out in time. So Mr. Krowski provided testimony in this case focused on the basically EV rebate parity for direct-to-consumer vehicle manufacturers, and was far more involved in, holding expertise around the current rebate landscape in Colorado, the interplay of federal rebates and state rebates and tax rebates. And it hasn't been an area of my focus in this case. And clearly, just more generally, I felt a little, funny not knowing the prices off the top of my head. I didn't expect to be asked that question.
Thank you. And you were and you were also asked a lot of questions about distribution system investments. And would you please explain, I don't want to take up too much time, but just briefly to the commission, in terms of priorities, what is Tesla's priority in this proceeding in terms of the budget?
The distribution system investments for public charging are the priority for Tesla. Again, the company provided a very salient data point in response to that discovery question from City of Denver, that from May 2022 to August 2023, 17 of 42 capacity check requests for public DCFC stations were going to need major, system expansions. So when that happens, those stations typically won't be built because there isn't system capacity. So there is a major concern and a sense of urgency that investments need to be made sooner rather than later in order for private market charging expansion to continue to meet the state's needs.
I have no further redirect questions. Commissioner Gilman, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Mandel. Mr. Ehrlich, you are up the hook and you may be excused, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, next up we have Sweep Witness Madsen. Hello, Mr. Madsen.
Good morning, Commissioner.
Morning. Can you please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, and are you alone as you testify today?
Yes.
Is anyone communicating with you in any way?
No.
If that changes, will you please stop and let me know?
I will.
Okay, is yours, Mr. Hyatt?
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Madsen. Can you please state and spell your name for the record?
It's Travis, Travis, Madsen, Madsen.
And are you testifying on behalf of Southwest Energy Efficiency Project, or SWEEP, in this proceeding?
Yes, I am.
What is your position with SWEEP?
My title is Transportation Program Director.
And did you file answer testimony, cross-answer testimony, and settlement testimony in this case, which are marked as hearing exhibits 900, 901, and 902?
Yes.
For the record, hearing exhibits 900, 901, and 902 have already been admitted into evidence at the beginning of this hearing, and Mr. Madsen is available for cross-examination.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes. Ms. McLaughlin, I've got staff at 15 minutes.
Great, thank you. Good morning, Mr. Madsen. My name is Katie McLaughlin, and I represent staff of the Public Utilities Commission. I have just a few questions for you today, so hopefully we won't take the entirety of the 15 minutes. But I want to start off by asking, you originally opposed the inclusion of distribution system investments through the TEP, right?
In my answer testimony, that's correct.
Okay. But SWEEP signed on as a party to the non-comprehensive or non-unanimous settlement agreement where the distribution investments are included.
That is also correct.
Okay. Now I want to move on to something that you noted in your cross-answer testimony. You maintain that SWEEP's position that the company should be allowed to own and operate EVSI behind the meter, correct?
Yeah, I think that's a separate issue than the distribution system investments, but yes.
Yes, I was moving on to something that you mentioned in your cross-answer testimony.
Okay.
That is a accurate description of what your position is on EVSI?
Yes, and I think that's a accurate description of the commercial portfolio from the first TEP and a big chunk of the commercial portfolio under the settlement agreement that I signed on to.
Okay, so you're recommending that costs be recovered through the TEPA rider for EVSI that the company constructs behind the meter?
On the customer side of the meter, yes.
And that would be, as we usually describe, behind the meter, the customer side?
Sorry, I'm getting a little confused about like which side of the meter behind refers to, but what I'm talking about is in between the the distribution system and the charger.
Okay, we can go ahead and use the terminology customer side of the meter. Does
Okay.
that, okay,
That's what I'm talking about.
great, thank you. So ratepayers would be paying for the EVSI that is on the customer side of the meter, correct?
In the commercial portfolio, yes.
And the company would earn a WACC return on the investments it makes to EVSI on the customer side of the meter.
Yes.
Is Public Service the only company in Colorado that can perform EVSI upgrades?
No, I think there's a variety of electrical contractors that are capable of doing that work.
So you'd agree that there's a private market for EVSI construction projects?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Madsen. Those are all of my questions. I appreciate your answers.
All right.
Thanks, Ms. McLaughlin. Commission Counsel, Ms. Dundas.
No questions for this witness.
Okay, Commissioner Plant.
I have no questions either.
Neither do I. Mr. Hyatt, do you have any redirects, sir?
I do not have any redirect.
This was efficient. Thank you, Mr. Madsen, for your testimony. You may be excused, sir.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah, thanks. Okay. Next, we have Mr. Haglund from Trial Stuff. You know what? Let's see. Maybe we'll get through our first questioner and then take a brief break, if that works for everybody here. So we'll get to a break around closer to 10:30. So if that works, good morning, Mr. Haglund.
Morning, Commissioner Gilman.
Can you please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
And are you alone this morning as you testify?
Yes.
And is anyone communicating with you in any way?
No.
You may put your hand down. And if that changes, will you please let me know?
Yes, I will.
Thank you, sir. I will turn him over to you, Ms. Roach.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good morning, Mr. Haglund. Can you please state and spell your name for the record?
Yes, first name is Eric, E-R-I-C, last name Haglund, H-A-G-L-U-N-D.
And by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by the Public Utilities Commission as a senior economist.
And did you cause to be filed hearing exhibit 400, 405, and 406 in this proceeding?
Yes.
And if I were to ask you those same questions today, would your answers be the same?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Haglund is available for questioning.
Thank you very much. And first up, we have CEO, Ms. Vitale. I have you for 25 minutes.
Commissioner, the Energy Office has decided to waive cross of Mr. Haglund.
Okie dokie. Next I have WRA Sierra Club. 30 minutes, Mr. Hasso.
Thank you, Commissioner Gilman. WRA and Sierra Club have also decided to waive cross of Mr. Haglund. We have no questions.
Okay, moving right along. Environmental Justice Coalition. Mr. Gonin, I have you for 15 minutes, sir.
Great, thank you. And I apologize for the sun shining directly in my face. Good morning, Mr. Haglund. For the record, my name is Robert Rigonin with Earth Justice. I'm going to be asking you questions today on behalf of the Environmental Justice Coalition. And I wanted to ask you questions about two topics here. The Public Charging Acceleration Network, or PCAN proposal, and the electric vehicle or EV purchase rebate. So first, I'd like to briefly discuss the PCAN proposal with you. So first, you're aware that the company proposed a PCAN proposal and it subsequently proposed a PCAN alternative proposal, right?
Yes.
And in your answer testimony, staff opposed both PCAN proposals. Didn't it? Sorry.
Yes, we opposed those as they were presented in the company's direct case and in supplemental direct.
And instead, staff proposed a PCAN Pi alternative that exclusively focuses on EVSI rebates, right?
Yes.
And staff joined the Affordability Coalition stipulation, didn't it?
Yes.
I'd like to pull up hearing exhibit 407 and turn to page 5. It might have been an attachment. My apologies. Hearing exhibit 407, attachment A. And turn to page 5. So looking at that, and scroll down slightly here, the last sentence of paragraph 7. So here the stipulation requests that the commission should ensure that any PCAN alternative program fit into a reduced budget of $108 million, correct?
Yes.
So the stipulation that staff joined does not reject the PCAN alternative program, right?
The stipulation that staff joined, as you can see in the earlier part of this paragraph, recommends that the commission prohibit company ownership of DCFC, but it is does not take a comprehensive position on whether there should be any funding towards support for a public fast charging network.
So it doesn't take a comprehensive position, but at the same time, in your settlement testimony, you state that staff continues to oppose the use of rebates for DCFC chargers. Is that right?
Yes.
Now, in fact, in your settlement testimony, you still maintain that the commission should adopt staff's PCAN Pi proposal, correct?
I believe that's correct, but if we're going to discuss it in any more detail, I'd appreciate if we could look at that portion of my testimony.
Let's go ahead and pull it up, which is hearing exhibit 406, and turn to page 25. And then if we'd scroll down to line 14. Now, just so we're on the same page, Mr. Haglund, you state here, staff maintains its answer testimony position that if the commission wants to support the development of public fast charging stations, it should do so exclusively through rebates for EVSI to support fast charging, not through support for chargers themselves. Staff calls this approach PCAN Pi. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Now, I'm having some difficulty reconciling these various statements and understanding staff's ultimate position on the PCAN issue. As we just established, staff joined the stipulation, right?
Yes.
And that stipulation does not oppose the company's PCAN alternative or takes, as you said, a not comprehensive position on it, right?
Yes.
And so long as it fits within the overall TEP budget of $108 million, correct?
That's correct. And the statement we're looking at here says that if the commission wants to support the development of public fast charging, it should do so exclusively through EVSI rebates.
So just to be clear here, since you joined that stipulation, staff would not object to a commission decision approving the company's pecan alternative, provided that the commission approved staff's recommendation for an overall lower TP budget. Is that right?
I believe that if you want to return to the language in the stipulation, I believe that it says if the commission is to approve some version of the pecan alternative, that it should do so within that budget. So the stipulation does not say, stipulation does not include a recommendation that the commission approve a pecan alternative or that it not do so. The stipulation remains silent on that particular recommendation or lack of recommendation.
Okay, I think we can agree to disagree here. I'm still a little bit confused, but I think we can move on. Well, let's shift gears here and talk about the pecan alternative proposal. So if we could pull up hearing exhibit 400, which is Mr. Haglin's answer testimony. And sorry, I think I saw I don't know if the document is up on everyone else's end, but I can't
Sorry,
see.
I had it up on the screen, but I noticed on the header it said 400C, so I wanted to make sure that it wasn't the confidential, but this is the public version from the spreadsheet.
Great, thank you. I appreciate the coverage there. Mr. Gilman, can I get just a quick time check here? I want to make sure that I'm maintaining my time.
I wrote it down accurately. Things moved around quickly there. I have you finishing at 10:20, all things considered. But
I'll actually close this exhibit out and move on really quickly just to the EV purchase rebate. Apologize for the delay there. So just wanted to pivot here and ask some questions about the EV purchase rebate program. So Mr. Haglund, in your answer testimony, you initially supported the EV purchase rebate program, correct? Or sorry.
No, I would not say that's correct.
It's not. Can we open exhibit 400? Sorry, the exhibit we just had open and go to page 80.
To save you some time, Mr. Ragonin, I think our position was we opposed the expansion of the program. We did not explicitly endorse the continuation of the existing program.
Okay, so you supported the continuation of the existing program, but you
no, we opposed the expansion of the program. We did not take a position one way or the other on the continuation of the program as approved from the original TEP.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So, and in joining the stipulation, staff now explicitly supports the removal of the EV purchase rebate program, right?
Yes.
And in supporting the removal of the EV purchase rebate program, you argue that federal incentives have reduced the need for utility provided rebates, right?
That is one of the reasons, yes.
And you point out that the Department of Energy and the Environmental Protection Agency have built an online tool that allows users to explore which vehicles are eligible for federal tax credits on a website called fueleconomy.gov, right?
Yes.
Let's go ahead and pull up hearing exhibit 406, attachment ERH21.
Commissioner Gilman, I'm going to make a kind of interesting objection here. CEO yesterday pointed out by introducing hearing exhibit 1506 that data actually isn't, the one from Eric's testimony isn't actually I don't know the word I'm looking for right now, but it's outdated. The in-service dates for new cars have changed, so we can save time by just moving right to that.
May I respond, Commissioner Gilman?
Yes.
I think this is extremely relevant to Mr. Haglin's position in pointing out federal rebates and what is eligible and what is not. I am pointing out exactly how outdated his previous exhibit and previous statements are.
Okay, that's fine. I just think to save some time, we've discussed it internally. You can move straight to 1506 and he can answer questions about that one.
I've not had this.
You can continue if you want. It was just a recommendation.
Oh, I'd like to pull that, please.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Rich. Go on, Mr. Regona.
Yeah, so hearing exhibit 406 ERH 21. And so if we scroll down, now this is what you included as attachment to your settlement testimony, Mr. Hagland, right?
That's right.
And this document is that same fueleconomy.gov webpage that you discussed.
Yes.
And would you agree that at the bottom of the first page, as Ms. Roach just established, under select date, you plan to take delivery, states April 18th, 2023 through December 31st, 2023. Is that right?
That's right.
And if we could scroll down to the second page. Well, I think you can agree with me then that since this is your attachment and you cited it, as of December 2023, a total of 40 vehicle models qualified for the federal tax credit, right?
Yes, that's my recollection of what was on the website at the time.
Thank you. That is all I need with that exhibit. If we could pull up here exhibit 1505, which was previously admitted to evidence. So Mr. Hagland, this is the same federal fueleconomy.gov website that you discussed and attached to your testimony, right?
Yes.
But at the bottom of the first page, instead of the January 2024 timeline selected, it is January 1st through December 31st, 2024, correct?
Yes.
So you would agree that this is the same tool, but it represents the vehicles that would qualify for the federal tax credit today, right?
That's my understanding, yes.
So if we scroll down to the second page of this document, scroll down a little bit more, apologies. You would agree, Mr. Hagland, that this page includes 3 vehicles that would qualify for the full $7,500 federal tax credit, right?
That's what I see on the page we have in front of us, yes.
Now, scrolling down to the third page, we might have to zoom out a bit here. So this includes 2 vehicles that would qualify for the full $7,500 federal tax credit, and includes 7 vehicles that would qualify for a $3,750 federal tax credit, right?
Yes, that looks correct.
Now, moving on to the fourth page, this includes 5 vehicles that would qualify for the full $7,500 federal tax credit, and 2 vehicles that would qualify for a $3,750 federal tax credit, right?
That's right.
So doing some quick math here and adding 3, 2, and 5, there are 10 vehicles that qualify for the full $7,500 federal tax credit, right?
I will accept your addition, yes.
And doing some more quick math, adding 7 to 2, there are now 9 vehicles that qualify for the $3,700 $150 federal tax credit, right?
Yes.
Now, would you agree that compared to the what you attached to your testimony, which was the time period of April 18th, 2023 to January 1st, 2024, there are less vehicles that would qualify for the federal tax credit?
Yes, it appears that there are fewer as of the date that this screenshot was taken than at the time when I filed my, I guess that was my settlement testimony. I used the data that was available at the time, and that's what I referenced. I would add that I understand that among the objectives of the Inflation Reduction Act is an effort to incentivize and encourage the production and manufacture of a lot of these EV components domestically, and that from what I read, there's a process underway, a lot of investments made by the auto manufacturers to relocate a lot of manufacturing facilities into the United States, which makes them increasingly eligible for these federal tax credits. So I expect that this is a process that will play out over time, that as you're pointing out, that the number of vehicles that will qualify at any particular time will change over time as this kind of slow process takes its course. But it does not surprise me that the exact number of vehicles has changed since the time I filed my settlement testimony.
So given those changes over time, you would agree though that an income qualified customer has half as many options for vehicles that qualify for the federal tax credit today than it did in December, right?
I'm not remembering the exact numbers you provided me with, but I'll accept that it's half. That seems right.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, sir. I think this brings us to a good time to take a quick break and give our court reporter a break in the morning. Ms. Mandel, go ahead.
Yes, very quickly, just for administrative purposes, I don't want to keep anybody from going to their break, especially the court reporter, but I just wanted to let everyone know that Tesla will be waiving cross-examination of Mr. Hagland, and I don't want to mispronounce the name, so the second trial staff witness. And additionally, thank you. And additionally, we will be waiving our cross-examination of UCA witness Dr. England. Thank you so much.
Appreciate the updates, helping me plan the day efficiently. No problem. Before we head to a break, Ms. Dundas, that brings us to no cross-examination for Ms. Gabra-Zabir on trial staff. Do you have any questions?
I do not.
Commissioner Plant?
I do not.
Okay, neither do I. So Ms. Roach, Ms. Gabra-Zabir is excused and will not need to appear, given that there's now no cross for her.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner.
We still do have active cross for everyone else on the list. So let us see. Let's come back at 10:40 if that works, and we will resume with EJC's questioning of Mr. Hagland. Thank you.
Oh, actually, one more thing I forgot, sorry. We do have revised attachments for an error that we found. So if we can keep Miss Gabra-Zabir on just to introduce those attachments and fix that error, we'd appreciate that.
Okay, we can bring her so you can do that. Mr.
Okay,
Ronan,
thank you.
We're gonna.
Yeah, I believe you said EJC cross-examination of Hagland. We just completed that.
Sorry.
Unless you want me to
It's a big spreadsheet. Fine, we'll go to public service. On Hagland, when we get back, we'll see you back at 10:40. Thanks for the update. Okay, I forget who we had up. Ms. Roach from trial staff. Were you all here as well?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, excellent. Okay. Is our court reporter back?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Harriet. All right, we will resume with public service questioning of Mr. Haglund. And I have you for 30 minutes.
Mr. Haglund, the company greatly appreciates staff's participation in this proceeding, and we're gonna, in particular, we appreciate your testimony as well, and we waive cross.
Alrighty then. Commission counsel. Ms. Dundas.
No questions for this witness. Thanks, Commissioner Malone.
Okay, Commissioner Plant.
I have no questions either.
Okie dokie. I have a couple questions for you, Mr. Haglund. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay. So, parties to this settlement agreement criticize the Affordability Coalition stipulation as, I think fairly having the potential to set back EV progress, kind of as a summary, right at a time when more support's needed. So I was just curious, as you were determining what level of support you found to be necessary as part of the stipulation, what kind of modeling or other support did staff use to determine if your proposal was essentially right-sized to keep the state at least on track in meeting a EV target?
Sure. So the main consideration in terms of the size of the stipulation budget was to maintain continuity with the existing TEP. I think it was staff's view, and I believe largely shared among the stipulating parties, that we've seen an impressive rate of EV adoption during the first TEP under the existing budget level, which, as you've heard from multiple witnesses now, has not been, the full budget of the first TEP has not been fully utilized. So, instead of trying to build up a new budget from sort of program by program from the ground up among a bunch of parties with a lot of divergent interests, the most easily agreed upon position among the stipulating parties was to maintain the budget from the first TEP.
Okay, thank you. And the company testifies with regard to the distribution system investments that they put forth as part of the settlement to support vehicle electrification. They've testified that without those investments outlined in the settlement agreement, if I were to summarize somewhat, that essentially our support of vehicle electrification may be jeopardized and the company may not find the capital or priority to do those projects. So seeing distribution system investments as potentially a major barrier here, what risk does staff see if those distribution system investments are not approved here in this proceeding to ensure that we can continue at the pace we would hope with vehicle electrification?
Well, I think we heard from Ms. Pauletti yesterday that if the company receives a request for service, it's obligated to meet that request. So, it's difficult for me to comment on, we don't have a lot of visibility into what communication happens between potential customers and the company regarding their pending interest in receiving service, and at what point that meets the level of putting in a formal request for service. But it seems clear from our perspective that if companies, whether DCFC or any other kind of companies, are requesting service, the company has to meet that. So it just isn't clear to me at all why granting rider recovery on a forecasted basis of this specially carved out category of investment is necessary for the company to meet the requests for service that would be necessary to carry out these investments.
Okay. The stipulating party suggests the use of a deferral mechanism for EV revenues. Essentially, if I were to you take the revenues from EV charging, however those are determined, that's maybe a question for you. Put them in a bucket, and then the intent is to make sure that that benefit flows through to ratepayers, right? So maybe talk me through from start to finish how you would see that functionally working if it were to be implemented.
Yeah, and I would point out off the top that I think, Commissioner Gilman, you've made a few queries into the relevance of the termination of the revenue decoupling mechanism, and I think this is very relevant to that issue. In some ways, I think this deferral proposal is more comprehensive than the decoupling mechanism ever was, because the decoupling mechanism only considered revenues from residential and small commercial customers. And as we've seen through a lot of the discussion in this proceeding, that there's quite a bit of load now associated with fleets, heavy-duty vehicles, and we expect that to continue to be a large source of load in the future. So that all would have been excluded from the decoupling mechanism, even if it remained in place. So to answer your question more directly, the proposal of the stipulating parties is to use the same forecast that the company is proposing to demonstrate statutory compliance, and to essentially say, if these are the revenues that demonstrate statutory compliance under the retail rate impact, then the company should defer those same revenues in a regulatory asset for inclusion in a future rate case, so that the commission, in determining the revenue requirement and the base rates set to recover the revenue requirement, can consider the totality of the same EV revenues that the company used to demonstrate statutory compliance for purposes of its TEP spending.
Okay. And in practicality, wouldn't those revenues show up in a rate case? So like, what functional difference is it, as you do that math in a rate case, as you look at, potential increase in the next rate case?
Sure. So some of these details are more fully fleshed out in the testimony of Mr. Higgins for CEC, but as proposed, the deferral would exclude the specific revenues in the test year. So the ones that would naturally show up in a rate case would be only those in the test year. This deferral mechanism would account for the cumulative revenues between rate cases. So it's the additional revenues that would show up are those that are not in the test year that have accrued since the last rate case.
Okay. And then you would take those and, if you're looking at what do you need as a revenue requirement on a yearly basis going forward, but you're taking one item that's cumulative, does that kind of functionally work? I can ask Mr. Higgins if it's.
Yeah. He might be the better one to explain the detailed way that would work. So I would defer that to him. Yes.
Okay. Those are my only questions for you, sir. Thank you. I will turn it back to you, Ms. Roach.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, Mr. Hecklin, do you recall your conversation with Mr. Magonin where he asked you about your pecan pie proposal?
Yes.
Can you please elaborate on your recommendation for why EVSI rebates for fast charging would be beneficial?
So staff's position is that any support that the commission should provide to support public fast charging should be limited to rebates for EVSI. Mr. Ragonen was asking specifically about the stipulations reference to the PCAN alternative proposal. The stipulation budget, as represented both in the stipulation document itself and is reproduced in my settlement testimony, does not include a budgetary line item for the PCAN alternative. So there's no endorsement of the PCAN alternative, but the statement that I was discussing with Mr. Ragonen was a shared position among stipulating parties that there should be no approval of utility ownership of DCFC.
Thank you. So do you also recall your conversation with him about how the federal rebate landscape has changed?
Yes.
Do you still think that federal rebates are a reason to oppose the EVA rebates in the settlement agreement?
Yes, I think the availability of increased federal and state rebates are one of the reasons staff provided for supporting discontinuing the utility rebates. The other two reasons being that the utility rebates are overall more expensive because the utility earns a return on them, and that the company has not provided any information as far as how that rebate would increase or accelerate EV adoption. So without knowing what the putative benefit of that rebate is to compare to its cost, staff believe there's no basis to approve it.
So what is your understanding of how the IRA's like more restrictive requirements will change the automotive industry?
As I mentioned in my answer to Mr. Ragonen, I would expect that over time, the effect of the IRA requirements will result in more production of EV components in the United States. So more vehicles will become eligible for those rebates over time.
And is it also your understanding that car makers are currently in the process of making those changes?
Yes.
So is it possible that the list of eligible vehicles expands this year or in the short term? Thank you, Mr. Haglund. That's all I have.
Appreciate your testimony here today, Mr. Haglund, and you are free to go. You're excused.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so Mr. McLaughlin, you need Ms. Gabra-Zavia for your exhibit purposes. Do we need to swear in? Are you going to be asking her questions or?
I largely was just going to be asking her questions about a small revision to her answer testimony and an attachment. If it would make it easier for you guys, we have filed it Tuesday morning on the e-filing system, and then we got confirmation from the company that they don't object to either of these revisions. So if we still need to pull up Ms. Gabra-Zavia, we can. Otherwise, we can introduce it just this way as well, whichever you would prefer.
Okay, let me see if anybody from the company is here to be able to comment. If you all can pop on and let me know. If we have any representative from public service who can let me know. Oh yeah, Ms. Dundas.
Speaking sort of out of turn, but I think it's generally the preference of the legal assistants that we admit documents through box.com during hearing. So if you just e-filed it, it might be best to present them today as well.
Great. They are in our box.com, so we can certainly do that. Thank you, Ms. Dundas.
Thank you.
Can I just confirm with the company that you have kind of stipulated or okay with admitting the exhibits Ms. McLaughlin's talking about in their revised format without needing to call Ms. Gebrezabir?
No objection.
Okay, then we will admit them.
Okay, do you want me to list them for the record, or do you want me to call Ms. Gebrezabir? I maybe misunderstood what Ms. Dundas was asking.
If there's no issues on foundation, then I think we can admit them without the witness, but it would be best if you agreed it to the record so we can keep track of it.
I can certainly do that. So we have hearing exhibit 401, answer testimony of staff witness Gebrezabir, Rev 1. And the second revision is to attachment NTG 10, Rev 1, and that is an attachment to Ms. Gebrezabir's answer testimony, hearing exhibit 401. Both of those are in ourbox.com as well.
Okay, and I heard no objection from the company on that, so we will admit those as you described, Ms. McLaughlin. Thank you. And
Thank
it
you
sounds
much.
like we have no need to bring Ms. Gebrezabir up to testify with that, so we will move on to Mr. Lemaire. Good morning, Mr. Lemaire.
Good morning.
Can you please hold up your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
And are you alone as you testify today?
Yes, I am.
Is anyone communicating with you in any way?
No,
If that changes, will you please stop your testimony and let me know?
I will.
Thank you, sir. With that, I will turn them over to you, Ms. McLaughlin.
Thank you. Could you please state your name and spell it for the record?
Sure. My name is Patrick Lemaire. First name Patrick, Patrick. Last name Lemaire, Lamere.
And by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I am employed by the Colorado Public Utilities Commission staff as a senior economist.
And did you cause to be filed what has been marked as hearing exhibit 404, the answer testimony of staff witness Lemaire and corresponding attachments?
Yes, I did.
If I were to ask you those questions today, would your answers be the same?
They would.
Mr. Lemaire is available for cross.
I think you're on mute, Commissioner.
That's correct. I got EJC for 15 minutes.
Thank you, Commissioner Gilman. And good morning, Mr. Lemaire. It's nice to meet you. I don't think we've met before. My name is Alexandra Schluntz with Earth Justice, and I'll be asking you questions today on behalf of the Environmental Justice Coalition. So I wanted to ask you about your recommendations around the electric school bus or e-bus program today. Now, to begin, you are aware that the company proposed an e-bus program as part of its 2024 to 2026 TEP, correct?
Correct.
And under the company's initial proposal, the budget for its e-bus program was $22.6 million.
That sounds accurate.
And staff instead recommended the commission approve an e-bus program with a $2.2 million budget, right?
That seems accurate, yes.
And are you aware that in the settlement agreement, the company agreed to reduce the e-bus budget by $12.1 million?
I'm aware. I'm not sure about that number, but I will take your word for it.
Okay. And so doing a little math and subject to check, that reduction brought the proposed budget from the company down to $10.5 million. Does that sound right?
Subject to check, yes.
And so that $10.5 million budget in the settlement, that reduced budget is closer to staff's recommendation for a $2.2 million budget as compared to the company's original proposal. Yes?
What do you mean by closer? Just so I can answer the question accurately.
Sure, just that the total amount of funds is closer to the proposal that staff had put forth.
If we're just looking at whether or not 10 million is less than 22 million, yes, but if we're looking at percent increases from the original 2021, 2023 TEP, it's still a substantial increase. I don't really know how to answer your question accurately. I would just say that 10 million is less than 22 million.
That answered my question. Thank you. Now, you didn't file settlement testimony, did you?
I did not personally know.
And did staff witness Eric Haglin's settlement testimony discuss the eBus program?
I will let his settlement testimony speak to itself. I don't recall the conversation about the eBus program though.
Okay, so just to clarify then, does staff oppose the settlement's eBus budget, which is $12.1 million less than the company's original eBus budget?
Staff didn't provide input towards the settlement agreement. Staff supports the stipulation, which includes the eBus program under the innovation portfolio. So I cannot weigh in, but staff did not provide testimony.
Okay, and under the stipulation agreement, do you know the budget for the eBus program under the stipulation?
I am aware that the stipulation's innovation portfolio budget is in the ballpark of 14 million. Without it in front of me, I think it would be helpful to see exactly, but I am aware that the innovation portfolio is consistent with my answer testimony recommendations, which then would be consistent with the 2.2 million budget of the eBus program.
Okay, thank you. So now comparing staff's and the settlement's eBus proposals, both proposals would provide rebates of $400,000, correct?
I do recommend that the cap on the individual incentive be or the rebate be 400,000. So yes, I think that's accurate. Yes.
And under staff's proposal, doing a little more math here, and again, subject to check, but with staff's preferred budget of $2.2 million and a $400,000 rebate, that would support up to 5 e-buses, correct?
Well, that depends whether or not the total, if we're talking about just the cost of the bus being 400,000, I would say that under that math, that's accurate, but that's with the assumption that each bus is 400,000.
Okay. And are you aware that the settlement's budget supports the purchase of up to 20 e-buses?
If we're doing more arithmetic, then I will take that number as you said. Sure. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So with the settlement including rebates for 20 buses and staff's proposed budget including rebates for 5 buses, again, assuming the full rebate amount is used, then the settlement would provide for about 4 times more buses than the staff's proposal would, right?
As long as the total budget is utilized and the program is able to provide rebates for 20 buses, I would say that is an accurate statement, sure.
And the eBus program will prioritize school districts within equity eligible and rural communities, correct?
That's my understanding of the company's proposal, yes.
So doesn't that mean that if the commission approves staff's proposal, equity eligible and rural communities would have fewer rebate opportunities for eBus purchases as compared to the settlement?
If we're just speaking to the total allocated budget of the eBus program, based on the math that you provided me, I would say that that is an accurate assessment, dependent on whether or not those rebates are able to be awarded to those communities.
Okay, and you would agree that when adopting TEPs, air quality is a consideration for this commission, right?
I would say that there's a number of factors that go into the commission's decisions regarding any proposal. So I'm not going to speak on behalf of the commission, but in general, I would say that, yeah, that air quality could be a potential factor in whether or not something gets approved.
Okay, and are you generally familiar with Senate Bill 19-077, which requires that utilities file TEPs?
I'm generally familiar with it, yes.
Okay, if we could please pull up hearing exhibit 200, attachment SEE-5. And for the record, this exhibit has been stipulated into evidence at the start of this hearing. And if we could please turn to page 5. And Mr. Lemaire, could you please review the text of section 2, so that's the top paragraph shown here, and then also section 2DI, which is sort of the bottom paragraph shown here, and let me know when you're finished.
I've reviewed it.
So doesn't Senate Bill 19-077 state that when the commission considers a TEP, it must consider whether the plan will contribute to meeting air quality standards and whether it will improve air quality in communities most affected by the transportation sector?
I believe this bill speaks for itself.
Okay, we can take down this exhibit, thank you. So assuming that all the rebates are awarded, wouldn't the settlement's e-bus program result in more reductions of air emissions than staff's e-bus proposal?
Can you repeat that question?
Sure, so assuming that all the rebates are awarded, wouldn't the settlement's e-bus program result in more reductions of air emissions as compared to staff's e-bus proposal?
I don't think I can agree with that. I think I would need to know, one, if we're displacing ICE-based electric, ICE-based buses as well. I don't think I can generally just assume that there would be a reduction in the emissions without additional information. So I don't think I can really accurately answer that.
Okay, would you agree that e-buses generally lead to reductions in air emissions?
As compared to what?
As compared to ICE conventional engine buses?
As compared to, yes, as compared to ICE vehicles on a one-to-one basis, I believe it's a fair assessment that there could be a reduction in, that there would be reduced emissions with the electric school bus versus the ICE bus, yes.
Okay, and would you agree that more e-buses would result in, would you agree that as compared to ICE buses, a greater number of e-buses would result in more air emission reductions than a smaller number of e-bus?
Objection. Mr. Lemire has answered that he is unaware of the specific emission reduction and does not have the capability to answer that question.
Can I respond, Commissioner?
Yes.
I think he just responded that he does agree that as compared to an ICE bus, a single e-bus would result in more emission reductions.
Can you please repeat your question?
So, Mr. Lemire, as compared to ICE buses, would a greater number of e-buses on the road result in more emission reductions as compared to a fewer number of e-buses on the road?
I would say a more accurate characterization is on a one-to-one basis, an e-bus would have less emissions than an ICE bus. That's the best characterization I can give, given the information.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to pull up your answer testimony, which is hearing exhibit 404. And if we could please turn to page 20. And now, starting on line 9 here, you summarize the company's reasons for subsidizing electric school buses, right?
Yeah, that seems accurate.
And moving down to page 21, starting on line 1, you describe the community and health impact.
Yeah, that seems accurate. Again, this is the company, but yes.
Yes, understood. And specifically, you state that the company's rationale is that e-buses visible to broad community segments offer significant health benefits by reducing emissions, benefiting routes, children, and drivers, right?
That's what it says, yes.
And moving down to line 14, here you acknowledge the quote, social, economic, and environmental benefits of electric school buses. Is that correct?
That's what it says, yes.
Next, I'd like to talk with you about the inaugural TEP's e-bus program. So the inaugural plan included funding for 8 rebates of $275,000 each, right?
That seems accurate, yes.
And you provided testimony that the inaugural plan was unsuccessful. Is that correct?
Can you point me towards that line just so I can answer the question accurately?
Absolutely. If you could look here, we're on the right page already, lines 16 to 18.
If I can read out loud, I state that the lack of success of the inaugural TEP school bus electrification plan highlights the need for more comprehensive evaluation of the program. So I state that there was a lack of success.
Okay, thank you. And in your testimony, you also noted that the inaugural program hadn't awarded any rebates, right?
On the school bus program at the time of filing, yes, that's what I state, yes.
And are you aware that after you filed that testimony, the company provided testimony that it has now awarded 2 rebates?
I'm familiar with it. I'd ask that it be brought up if there's going to be further questions on it, though.
I think that's my only question on it, but I'm happy to pull it up if you'd like to review that.
Then I don't think that's necessary. I will take your word for it.
Thank you. Now, the inaugural TEP, that was the very first time that the company provided an e-bus program, wasn't it?
In the context of a TEP, yes.
And you would agree, wouldn't you, that as adopted by the settlement, the e-bus program includes a number of changes to the initial program?
Initial program
The
meaning,
inaugural program.
yeah, I would say that there's very distinct differences between the inaugural program and the one proposed in the settlement.
Okay, so for example, the settlement calls for increased rebates of up to $400,000, correct?
Yes.
And that $400,000 rebate would cover the entire cost of an e-bus?
It's my understanding that it's expected to cover the total cost of an e-bus, but there is also additional funding opportunities, such as providing for support of implementation of the e-bus within the school, additional capabilities on wiring and configuration. So I would ask that the settlement agreement be brought up just so I can provide an accurate answer, but it is my understanding that the individual rebates cover additional, the full cost of implementing an e-bus.
I think that answered my question. Thank you. And the company has provided testimony that the inaugural TEP's lower rebate level was a key barrier to participation in the program, correct?
Yes, I believe that's true.
And you would agree, wouldn't you, that providing a higher rebate to school districts could enhance the program's success?
I believe I state that, yes, more additional individual funding towards one school bus can certainly help aid in attracting, and allowing for more schools to participate.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions. Thank you, Mr. Lemire.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll go to Commission Counsel.
I don't have any questions for this witness.
Thank you, Commissioner Plant.
I have no questions for this witness either.
I also have no questions. I'll turn it back to you, Ms. McLaughlin, for any redirect.
Thank you. Just a brief redirect. Mr. Lemire, going back to some of the first questions that you discussed, does the innovation portfolio and the stipulation have room to accommodate your 2.2 million recommendation on e-buses?
Yes, it does.
And would the commission allocating this amount be in conflict with the stipulation's budget?
No.
So you discussed the amount of school buses that each of the proposals could potentially fund. Assuming that a school bus receives $40,000 for each EV bus, would a total of 5 buses still be a benefit to this service territory?
The correction is 400,000, but yes, it would be.
I apologize if I misspoke. Thank you. Now, do you recall if there's any other incentives that school districts can use to obtain an electric school bus?
Yes, there's a number of opportunities for schools, specifically in Colorado and the Piesco service territory, that they can take advantage of. I go into depth on the opportunities for them to take advantage of these opportunities, these rebates, both at the federal level and at the state level through CDPHE. And I also, in my answer testimony, provide a recommendation that Piesco should continue to engage with CDPHE and continue to stress the importance of the opportunities for schools to take advantage of if they are seeking to purchase a school bus.
Do you have any specific numbers on those federal or state incentives that would be helpful?
I provide those exact numbers within my answer testimony.
Would it be helpful if we pulled that up?
Yeah, that would be more helpful, just so I can accurately answer.
Absolutely. Could we please pull up hearing exhibit 404? That's the answer testimony of staff witness Lemire, and I'd like to turn to page 17. And feel free to zoom out on this so that we can get some of those numbers. And Mr. Lemire, if that's too small for you, we can go ahead and zoom in. I apologize, but why don't you take a look at this and let us know if that's refreshed your recollection?
Yes, it does.
So do you recall any specific federal or state rebates that electric school buses are eligible to receive?
Yes, and as I provide within my answer testimony, and that is up on the screen now, through the EPA's Clean School Bus Program, there's an allocated amount of 500 million. I'm also aware that currently, as of right now, there's that school bus program is open for applications. Also, I note the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act, which allocated an additional 500 million towards the Renew America School program, which is just an additional funding available to these schools if they want to seek an e-bus. I believe that, as I mentioned earlier, and a little further down, I also include the amounts related to CDPHE's school bus program that schools can take advantage of.
Can we please scroll down to the next page so that Mr. Lemire can refresh his recollection on the state EVs?
Yes, I appreciate that. And as I stated, through CDPHE, there's the allocated amount of 65 million reading directly in funding to support the adoption of battery electric school buses.
So with the 2.2 million you suggest, could that fund more than 5 buses when combined with these federal and state funds?
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you. We can go ahead and take this exhibit down. Now, do you recall when you were talking about the Senate bill regarding TEPs?
I do.
Okay. Are there any other considerations that the commission must take into account beyond just air quality when they are evaluating a TEP?
Yes, absolutely. Not only are they to consider the emissions reductions requirements, but also taking consideration the total cost of the TEP, bill impacts, subsidization amongst different customer groups, resiliency and reliability, while also promoting economic prosperity. I can continue to go on, but I think in summary that there's a lot of other considerations other than just the air quality, in which I read from the Senate bill, that the commission should take into consideration before, in their deliberations of TEP.
And last question for you. You were asked if assuming all rebates were awarded, there would be fewer emissions. Can you explain what you meant by your response that it depended on whether they were replacing ICE buses?
Yeah, sure. So on a one-to-one, if we're comparing a ICE bus compared to an electric bus, the actual fuel source of the ICE bus generates greater emissions than that of an electric bus. And so essentially, when we're comparing the two on a one-to-one scale, it can be assumed that the emissions from the fuel source are greater than that of an electric bus.
I think that is all that I have for you on redirect. I appreciate your answers, Mr. Lemaire.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McLaughlin. And with that, Mr. Lemaire, you are excused. Free to go. Thank you for your testimony, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Mr. Higgins. And hello, good morning, Mr. Higgins.
Good morning, Commissioner Gilman.
Thank you. Can you please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And are you alone as you testify today?
Yes, I am.
And is anyone communicating with you in any way?
No.
If that changes, will you please stop and let me know?
Certainly.
Thank you, sir. You may go on, Ms. King.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good morning, Mr. Higgins.
Good morning, Ms. King.
Would you please state and spell your name for the record?
My name is Kevin C. Higgins, Kevin, middle initial C, Higgins.
And by whom are you employed and in what capacity, Mr. Higgins?
I'm a principal in the consulting firm Energy Strategies.
And I will submit to you that Exhibit 600, which is your answer testimony, and attachments KCH1 and KCH2, and also Exhibit 601, which is your stipulation testimony, were admitted into the record. Do you have any corrections to make to your answer testimony or stipulation testimony?
Yes, in my answer testimony on page 24, line 6, I do wish to delete 2 words, and those words are "and EVSI."
Thank you, Mr. Higgins, and thank you, Ms. Kunkel, as well. With that correction, deleting the words "and EVSI,"
if I were to ask you the questions provided in your answer testimony and stipulation testimony today, would your answers be the same?
Yes.
Thank you. And we're done with this exhibit. Ms. Kunkel, thank you. And with that, Mr. Higgins is available for cross-examination and questions of the commission.
Thank you, Ms. King. I have public service for 20 minutes. Mr. Manshall.
We're going to waive cross. Thank you so much for being here today. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Commission counsel, Ms. Dundas.
No questions for this witness.
Okay. Commissioner Plant.
I have no questions either.
Hi, Mr. Higgins. We got a preview maybe when I was talking with Mr. Haglund. Just wanted you to take me through in the Affordability Coalition's proposal for essentially I'm sorry, let me find my notes. That'll transpire a little more quickly than I was expecting. For the stipulating party's proposal on the deferral mechanism for EV revenues, can you kind of walk me through from start to finish where the money goes, how it functionally works, and then how that provides more assurance that that cost is directly passed on to ratepayers?
Certainly, I'd be happy to do that. And let me say too that for written reference, I provide a description in my answer testimony on page 15, starting at line 12. But to address your question more fully right now, it may be easier to do with an example. And for that example, perhaps we can look at page 13 of my answer testimony, which is exhibit.
What's the exhibit number?
Yes.
There we go. Okay.
So if we start with this table KCH3, which is simply a replication of Piesco's own calculations. These are not my calculations, but the company's. And if we look at 2024, the first year of the new program, the company has calculated net revenue from EV charging of approximately $42 million. You can see that in the third line under 2024. There's the gross revenue, then there's the cost to serve, and then there's the net revenue. And this is the net revenue that the company uses to demonstrate statutory compliance with the rate impact cap. Under my deferral proposal and the proposal that is part of the Affordability Coalition stipulation, in 2024, this $42 million would be deferred in a regulatory liability. That is, it would be tracked, and it would be tracked on behalf of customers for recognition in the company's next general rate case. Now, let's assume that in the next general rate case, the approved test year is 2024, the exact same year we're talking about here. If that were the case, then the test period revenues that the company would present in its rate case would in fact already include the net revenue from EV charging, in which case the deferral could essentially be adjusted out of the revenue requirement. In other words, the test year would already capture these revenues. However, suppose the company's next general rate case uses a test period of 2025. If that were the case, then this $42 million of net revenue from EV charging in 2024 would in fact flow to the company. It would not flow to customers absent a deferral. And so what would occur in this example is that in that subsequent rate case, whereas the 2025 test period would capture the 2025 net revenue from EV charging, which you can see in this table would be $64.5 million. Under the deferral proposal, the $42 million of net revenue from EV charging that would have been deferred would also be credited to customers in determining rates in that next rate case. So it would be, in essence, as would occur with any kind of deferred accounting, it would be set aside, tracked, and then applied on a going forward basis when there is a next general rate case, so that in fact, these revenues, these net revenues from EV charging that are being used to demonstrate statutory compliance, in fact, would find their way into customer rates as a credit against their rates going forward. So I hope that explanation addresses your question, and if not, I'd be happy to elaborate further.
No, I think that was helpful. That's my only question for you, sir. Thank you for your help. Ms. King, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. And just very briefly, one question for Mr. Higgins, and that is, absent this deferral, how would those revenues be tracked by Public Service Company if we didn't have the deferral that the Affordability Coalition recommends?
Well, absent this deferral, in the second example I gave, if the next rate case uses a test year of 2025, the revenues from EV charging that would have been realized in 2024 would simply flow to the company's shareholders. They would not flow to customers at all. They would not be recognized in customer rates. I appreciate that there are some riders that might show some sort of adjustment, but these revenues in table KCH3 are base revenues. These were calculated by Public Service using projections of base revenues, and none of these base revenues, this $42 million we're talking about, would actually flow to the benefit of customers.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins, for your testimony. I have nothing further to ask.
Mr. Higgins, thank you for your testimony, sir. You are free to go and excused today.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got UCA witness England as our last witness. Looks to me like we can get in maybe one or two crosses before we go to lunch. So, yeah, Mr. Mitchell.
The company is waiving its cross-examination time allocated to Dr. England.
Gotcha, sir. Thank you so much. Any other adjustments to the timing before we get him started?
Yes, the Energy Office would also like to waive its time for Dr. England.
Okay. Anything else?
And Commissioner, WRA and Sierra Club will likewise be waiving our time for Dr. England.
Okay. I've got only EJC left, if that matches with what everyone else sees. Okay. Alrighty then. Before we get started with Mr. England, I originally was projecting we would go for a short session after lunch. Now does not quite look like that with the timing. So I did just want to prepare folks to be able to talk about exhibits and see if we are in good shape with the record. So maybe before I put Mr. England on, I just wanted Ms. Dundas to maybe go over some of that information so y'all can be thinking about that so that we don't have a big delay in closing this out when we're done with our final witness. So Ms. Dundas, if you could help me trigger that conversation just so we can get folks prepared to talk about that.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner. As the parties know, the transcript will control in the proceeding, but as a courtesy, I've been keeping a list of exhibits admitted or administrative notice was taken of during testimony. So I will read that out if that makes sense.
Yeah, and just to be clear, this kind of just an advance notice. We'll go forward with Mr. England's testimony after this, but we just wanted people to have the time to confirm during that testimony internally.
So I have that exhibit, hearing exhibit 125 was admitted, hearing exhibit 1505 and 1506 were admitted. 1605 and 1606 were admitted. 205 was admitted. Hearing exhibit 2200 was admitted. Then we had hearing exhibits 407 and 408 admitted. 411 admitted. 412 admitted. 416 admitted. 420 admitted. 422 admitted. Administrative notice of 424. 602 admitted. And then 401 revision 1 and 401 attachment NTG10 revision 1 were admitted. And then obviously all the exhibits on hearing exhibit 2200.
Excellent. Thanks, Ms. Dundas. This is our effort to kind of go fair warning. We can have a more fulsome discussion after we're done with Mr. England, but Ms. Shields, you have something right now?
Yes, real. All right, excuse us, just dealing with sound issues. We just wanted to clarify if Ms. Dundas mentioned hearing exhibit 125 that was introduced by the company and admitted into the record.
I did say 125, which I have down as admitted.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Any other issues? Give them some thought during our 15 minutes across Mr. England, and then we can have a more fulsome discussion if there's any other changes to those. Thank you, Ms. Dundas, for your organization and for helping us get that conversation going. Okay, with that, Mr. England, sorry for the slight false start before we're ready for you. Mr. England, can you please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And are you alone as you testify today?
Yes.
Is anyone communicating with you in any way?
No.
If that changes, will you please stop and let me know?
Of course.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Dixon?
Thank you. Dr. England, you hold a PhD in economics, am I correct?
Yes, that is correct.
All right, so I will refer to you as Dr. England hereafter. Did you cause to be filed hearing exhibit 200, which was your answer testimony, and hearing exhibit 203, revise 1 or revision 1, which was your settlement testimony, as well as attachments 1 through 46. They were SEE 1 through 46. Did you cause those to be prepared?
Yes, I did.
And are there any changes you need to make to those documents at this time?
No, I do not.
All right. And if I were to ask you the same questions, and would you provide the same answers?
I would.
All right. And these exhibits have already been admitted for Dr. England. So Dr. England is available for cross-examination by, I guess, environmental justice.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon, and apologies, Dr. England. England was easy enough to pronounce, so I needed a new challenge, which was the doctor thing. So apologies.
No offense taken.
We will move on to Mr. Ragonin.
Thank you, Commissioner Gilman. And good morning, Dr. England. Hopefully I won't keep you from lunch too long here. For the record, my name is Robert Ragonin with Earth Justice. And I'll be asking you questions today on behalf of the Environmental Justice Coalition. So specifically, I wanted to ask you questions about the electric vehicle or EV purchase rebate program. So let's start with the big picture here. You would agree that a primary goal of a TEP is to provide access to EVs for low-income customers, right?
The primary objective of the TEP is to electrify transportation for the state of Colorado. A subset of that is providing access to all, including income qualified and disproportionately impacted communities.
Thank you for that. And you are aware that PSCO in this proceeding proposed an expanded EV rebate program as a part of this 2024 to 2026 TEP.
When you say expanded, could you define expanded from what?
Sure. As a part of its proposal, it plans to offer its rebate to more customers, correct?
I believe the budgeted amount in the settlement agreement is actually less than the original inaugural TEP budgeted amount. I think in the initial TEP, the budget was 5 million, and in the settlement, it's like 4.1 million, if I recall correct.
Right. And specifically, as a part of this plan, PSCO plans to offer this rebate to customers in disproportionately impacted communities. Is that right?
There is a tiered rebate offer within the settlement agreement.
Great. And that's exactly what I mean when I say expanded. But you would agree that one of PSCO's reasons for proposing this rebate program is to ensure that equity eligible communities have equitable access to public health and environmental benefits?
It is one avenue to accomplish that, yes.
Great. Well, I'd like to pull up hearing exhibit 201, which is UCA witness Henry Sermos's answer testimony. And if we could turn to page 10. Now, Dr. England, I know this isn't your testimony, but this is another UCA witness's testimony, right?
Yes, it's Ms. Henry Sermos's testimony.
Now, on page 10, starting on line 5, Ms. Henry Sermos states that Colorado has a large diversity gap in EV owners. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
And moving down to line 9, Ms. UCA witness Henry Sermos points out that Black and Latino households who have been exposed to information about these vehicles are equally interested in EV ownership, especially because they are highly motivated about environmental issues. Is that correct?
You read that correctly.
Now, I'd like to scroll down to page 11 and starting on line 3. Now, in response to the question, is EV affordability also a challenge for Coloradans seeking to enter the EV market? UCA says yes, right?
That's what it says there, yes.
And on line 12, UCA states that these financial concerns are especially true for IQ customers and DI communities. Is that right?
Again, that's what it says, yes.
Now, despite these statements, UCA opposes the Clean Vehicle Program entirely, including the EV Purchase Rebate Program, right?
Correct.
Thank you. And we can close out this exhibit. Now, I want to backtrack here a little bit. UCA also intervenes in the inaugural public service TEP as the Office of the Consumer Counsel, right?
I believe that may have been our name at the time, yes.
And in that case, UCA opposed the EV Purchase Rebate Program, right?
Yes.
But the commission disagreed with UCA, and the commission approved an EV Purchase Rebate Program in Public Services inaugural TEP, correct?
Correct.
We could please open up here exhibit 200, attachment SEE-6.
Sorry, it's just taking a minute to open.
No worries. Sure, the clouds and internets out there are also eager for lunch. Great. And so, Dr. England, Well, for the record, this exhibit has been stipulated into evidence at the start of this hearing. And Dr. England, this is the commission's inaugural TEP decision, correct?
It is.
Now, if we could turn to page 33 and navigate to paragraph 103. Yes, right there. We could actually, yeah, scroll down slightly. Perfect. So we navigate to that last sentence starting in page 33. The decision states, yet the record does support the thoughtful pursuit of programs that allow for equitable participation in the transition to widespread transportation electrification by customers who may not be able to access and benefit from the utility's other TEP programs. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
I wanted to jump over to page 34. And if we scroll down to paragraph 104. Now, Dr. England, could you please just read paragraph 104 to yourself and let me know when you are done?
Okay.
Now, based on what you just read, didn't the commission's decision state that equity, the EV purchase rebate program, complements other TEP equity programs?
Yes, that's within this paragraph.
And doesn't the commission also recognize that the TEP's equity programs will provide access to IQ customers to widespread transportation electrification?
Again, it will provide access as one of the programs offered in the entire TEP program, yes.
So you would agree, wouldn't you, that in the inaugural public service TEP, the commission rejected UCA's arguments as to that issue, and it decided that the EV rebate program was important to advance equity?
In the inaugural TEP, yes. However, since the inaugural TEP, there are other avenues for EV rebates as identified throughout this hearing that should supplant the utility rebate.
Okay, well, we can close that document out then. UCA also intervened in the inaugural Black Hills TEP, right?
Yes.
And in that case, UCA also opposed the EV purchase rebate, right? That's the inaugural Black Hills TEP case.
Yes, we did.
But in the inaugural Black Hills TEP case, the commission also disagreed with UCA, and it ordered Black Hills to implement an equity EV purchase rebate program, right?
I believe on exceptions, the commission overruled the ALJ and approved an equity rebate program.
And in that inaugural Black Hills TEP decision that you just discussed, the commission also rejected UCA's position in that case, and it similarly adopted the EV rebate program to advance equity, right?
They did reject UCA's recommendation.
Now, UCA also intervened in the pending Black Hills 2024 to 2026 TEP, right?
Yes.
And like the other proceedings, UCA also opposed the EV purchase rebate program in that Black Hills 2024 to 2026 TEP case, right?
Yes.
And I know that this is not a final decision, but are you aware that the administrative law judge in the Black Hills 2024 to 2026 TEP case recently issued a recommended decision that reinstates the EV purchase rebate?
I don't remember exactly what the decision stated, but I believe there were references to the ALJ having the belief that it was the current commission policy to have this program, but the ALJ also pointed out that there are sufficient changes to the available funding from other sources.
Well, allow me to just quickly refresh recollection here. Pull up exhibits 1707 from the Environmental Justice Coalition's box.com folder. So, Dr. England, this is the ALJ's recommended decision in the 2024 to 2026 Black Hills TEP case. Is that right?
Yes.
For the record, this is a commission decision, but at this point I would just request that the commission takes administrative notice of its own decision.
Mr. Dixon, any issue? You're muted, sir.
Sorry, Your Honor. No objection. These three screens kind of get in my way every now and then. I miss my mute button.
I've been guilty of that as well. Okay. Yes, so recognize Mr. Rigonin.
Thank you, Commissioner Gilman. So we go to page 45 and paragraph 106. So that first sentence of that paragraph, Dr. England, it states, for the reasons discussed, the ALJ finds that on balance, continuing some version of an IQ EV purchase rebate program serves the public interest and is consistent with section 40-5-1072G CRS by providing another option for income qualified customers. Did I read that correctly?
You did.
So you would agree then that the ALJ did issue a decision that reinstates the EV purchase rebate program then?
The ALJ recommended continuance of the program for EV rebates for the IQ community, yes.
Thank you. So to summarize here, UCA opposed the equity-focused EV purchase rebate program in the commission's previous 3 TEP proceedings, and the commission has repeatedly disagreed with UCA, hasn't it?
The commission has disagreed with the UCA for the inaugural TEPs. They have yet to weigh in on the second Black Hills TEP.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gonin. Ms. Dundas, Commission Counsel.
No questions for this witness.
Okay, Commissioner Plant.
I have no questions either.
Okay, I also have no questions for you, Dr. England. I will turn it over to Mr. Dixon.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just need a moment to pull up this decision on my computer so I can search it for a moment. We're referring to, by the way, that's exhibit 1707. So if you can give me just a moment, I would like to pull it up.
Sure.
Sorry, there's well over 100 paragraphs. I know what's in what I'm looking for, but I hadn't anticipated this coming up. So I just need a moment to find more information that was discussed by Mr. Riggin.
Sure.
And I'm sure I'm butchering the name. I apologize.
Join the club. Doing it all week.
What I don't want to do is paraphrase, and that's why I wanted to look at this specifically. I'm gonna need one more moment.
Yeah.
And
Are you trying to find the same paragraph he referred to on cross?
no, I'm trying to find another one. It'll give me just a minute.
No
It may be the same. I just want, as I said, I don't have this one in front of me, and I will be just another few minutes. I just don't want to mischaracterize anything. That's why I want to pull it up. I'm finding what I want. It's just taking a minute. The wheel's spinning, so I'm waiting for it to open. Sorry. Let's turn to paragraph 103 of Commission Decision 1707, Mr. England, or excuse me, Dr. England. I'm double screwed up now. And as long as we're talking about reading things into the record, why don't you read the first sentence of the paragraph 103? And could that, oh, thank you for making it bigger. I keep putting my glasses on and off.
Just to be clear, you want me to read the first sentence?
Just the first sentence. The whole document's in the record, but I think this is relevant to what we've heard on cross-examination.
The question of whether to continue an IQ EV purchase rebate program is a close one.
And can we continue down in that paragraph slowly so Mr. or Dr. England can read it? And continue on to the next page. I need to have it expanded. I'm sorry. And I just wanted to keep scrolling down slowly so we can both read it. Again, I don't want to misquote the decision. And if you'll just keep going, if Dr. England's fine, keep going. We're going to go down approaching paragraph 106. There's some paragraphs in between that I want to focus on.
I've reviewed the paragraph.
Keep going, please. And I want to start focusing on paragraph 105.
I've finished reading that if you have a question.
All right, yes, I just wanted to wait for you to be finished. Now, this, why don't you just read out loud? Hang on a second here. The first two sentences.
Of paragraph 105?
Yes, please.
In the company's inaugural plan, the commission reversed the recommended decision's rejection of an EV purchase rebate and required the company to provide an IQ EV purchase rebate. It can be fairly reasoned that this represents the commission's preferred policy position on EV purchase rebates, at least at the time the commission issued its decision in 2021.
All right, sir. And do you recall when those decisions that are referenced in 2021 were issued?
Sorry, I do not.
All right, this is going to require taking a few minutes, Your Honor, if I may have. I can represent to you, if the parties will agree, that I'm just going to the dates of the inaugural decisions in the Black Hills case, which were issued. I can give the rough dates of when those were done, or I can take a minute and pull them up. It's your option. Your Honor, I'm directing that to you, whatever you want me to do.
Sorry, sir. Restate. Can you ask again?
Okay, give me just a minute. Sorry, for whatever reason, my computer at the moment is not allowing me to open up what I'm trying to get, which is up. So again, I apologize, but this is technology in action.
Or not in action?
Well, yeah, I mean, I know this, but I just am trying to pull it up so I can make it a little easier. I'm basically on 3 computers, so one of the problems is getting this all coordinated. Okay. There is some reference to the UCA exceptions being filed in this case by Mr. Rignon, correct? And by this case, I mean the Black Hills pending transportation electrification case 23A-0244E.
You asking me that or Dr. England?
I'm Dr. England. I'm sorry, Your Honor.
Sure.
I'm sorry, what was your question?
That the UCA has filed exceptions in the Black Hills transportation electrification case 23A-0244E.
Yes, we have.
All right. And would you, and Your Honor, I had not anticipated this, but I'm perfectly prepared to ask the commission to take administrative notice of our exceptions, since they have been brought up by Mr. Rignon.
Respectfully, can I respond, please?
Yes, sir.
I did not mention UCA's exceptions in this case, just the overall position. And I don't think it's appropriate at this time to bring in exceptions that the commission will be considering in the coming weeks.
Mr. Dixon?
Yeah, a couple things. First of all, Mr. Rignon has brought up the recommended decision, noting that it is not a commission decision. And he has brought up the fact that the UCA has opposition. I can go through the exceptions very slowly, or we can put them in the record. My goal was to point out very quickly that the exceptions point out that, as Dr. England just stated, the ALJ's decision was based on the policies in 2021 at this time. That was in her decision itself that Dr. England has just provided. What I would show and what I can show is that the decisions that were issued in the 23A-0204E Public Service TEP were issued prior to the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, and were issued prior to, and I think it's the Infrastructure Investment Tax Jobs Act 2022. And so when she made her ruling that he has referred to, her ruling was based on the commission's positions in 2021, and she so stated when she said at this time. And she also had issued those decisions that she relied on were issued prior to the federal laws and the state laws and the state activity that has occurred since that time.
Ms. Dundas, what's your thought?
Did Mr. Mansholt have something before I go?
Mr. Mansholt?
It seems like we're getting a little away from a response to objection into testimony by Mr. Dixon. We don't oppose, though, putting, if he really wants to, is these arguments in the SOP in this case, or if you really need to administrative notice of the exceptions, that's fine, but I don't think we should have testimony on their legal arguments in this proceeding.
Ms. Dundas?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think that to the extent Mr. Dixon's witness and not Mr. Dixon can testify to UCA's position in previous cases or ongoing cases, that's appropriate. If you think that you need UCA's exceptions as part of the record here, you're welcome to admit it through administrative notice, but I'm not sure what weight that would be given in this proceeding.
Okay.
So
Mr.
I think where we're
no, go ahead.
I think where we're at is that Mr. Dixon can continue redirect with his witness and discuss perhaps generally the positions UCA is taking in other proceedings. And if you think it'd be necessary to get that on the written record, he can move for admission and you can rule on that.
Okay. Mr. Dixon, seems clean enough to me if you can just clear up with your witness and redirect kind of the timing that buttress the previous decisions and then the timing of, you know, related incentives and things. That might be the cleanest. Is that acceptable to you?
Yes, perhaps I can make, again, I had not anticipated this. Let me just double check the commission numbers and what I'm going to do. The decision numbers, I'm going to ask you to take administrative notice of them that were issued in the inaugural proceeding, since that's the proceeding that Mr. Riggin raised. And I am looking at, I would like you to take administrative notice of decision number R21-0486, which was the recommended decision in that case. And that's in proceeding number, that we're now talking Black Hills 20A-0195E. And then there is the commission decision addressing the recommended decision, which is decision C21-0651, again, issued in proceeding number 20A-0195E. I am introducing them solely for the purpose at this time of showing the dates that the decisions were issued that were relied upon by ALJ Murbaba in her decision, in her recommended decision in case number 23A-0244E, the Black Hills TEP case.
Mr. Gonin, do you have any issue with those being entered just for the purpose of recognizing the dates? If not, I suspect we can get Mr. Dixon to get there with his witness and recognizing the dates. But what's your preference?
I do not have any objection here.
Okay.
Thank you. That will definitely expedite what I was going to be doing on redirect, and I apologize that it's taken this long. As I said, I did not anticipate this. And do we still have that decision, the recommended decision pulled up? I was at paragraph 105. And if we could just scroll down through 105 into 106, I'll see if I am done with my questions. And again, if you would read the last line, this will at least complete in paragraph 105 the ALJ's decision and comments she made regarding continuing the IQ EV purchase rebate program. If you could read it out loud.
I'm sorry, what is it you would like me to read out loud?
Last sentence on paragraph 105, right above this paragraph 106 number.
While many circumstances have changed since then, including the availability of other generous non-company sponsored incentives, the ALJ finds the Commission's prior policy position on this issue compelling.
Thank you. Now, Dr. England, you've been asked that, or noted that the UCA opposed the clean heat plan. Can you just explain for the record why UCA opposed the clean heat vehicle plan?
The clean vehicles portfolio?
Sorry, yes. I'm sorry, I'm confused with my clean heat case. I apologize. The clean vehicle portfolio.
The UCA is of the position that any unnecessary or duplicative funding should be avoided in order to minimize the costs and maximize the benefits, as is the goal of the Transportation Electrification Plan. The fact that numerous rebates exist for all the entities within the clean vehicles portfolio, there is not evidence in this case that additional rebates are necessary beyond what the federal and state incentives are.
Thank you, Dr. England. I have nothing further. Your Honor, one question. I'll be happy to supplement the record with these two decisions that you agreed to take administrative notice without objection. Is that what you would prefer?
Yes, sounded like that was not objectionable.
I'll get in touch with Ms. Dundas and make sure we get that done. Thank you.
Okay.
And I have nothing further on redirect.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Dr. England, you are free to go. Thank you for your testimony today, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, given that and Ms. Dundas's reading into the record previously of exhibits that have been offered and accepted, wanted to just check in with the parties here. I know we're pushing into lunch hour a little, but it appears we were pretty much done here, so it might not make sense to break and come back. So I wanted to just do it while we're here and see if there are any issues with the record as any of the parties understand it.
None for public service.
Okay. Anyone else?
For UCA, Your Honor, I will put those two exhibits in the UCA hearing box so they can be transferred to the exhibit list.
Thank you, sir. Okay, hearing no issues about the record or about exhibits, I did want to talk about SOPs unless you have something else, Mr. Moritska.
Oh, no, nothing at all. I was just turning my camera back on as we're wrapping up here. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so talking about SOPs, in looking at the consensus schedule, it had a date of February 7th. I did want to inquire with the parties. We've ended hearing 3 days earlier than anticipated. If there's a possibility to move that up by 3 business days as well to recognize the fairly limited amount of time that was in this consensus schedule for the commission to actually reach our statutory decision by the end of February. So just wanted to inquire, do we think it might be possible to go with statements of position by February 2nd, moving that up the same number of business days that we have expedited finishing the hearing. So wanted to get a sense of if that could be possible. From
the company's perspective, we really do appreciate the commission holding a very efficient hearing on a much expedited schedule from where we were originally. So thank you guys so much for a very efficient process. In terms of the SOP date, as of right now, I think we would continue to recommend the 7th. I know from the company's perspective, we would like to try to be as efficient as possible and trying to work with the settling parties to see whether a joint SOP may be possible with most, if not all, of the settling parties. And when you coordinate with multiple parties, there is quite a bit of time required for that drafting process. So in terms of us having that efficient, more streamlined SOP process, we'd recommend continuing the 7th, but we'll defer to the commission's decision.
Other thoughts on that? Mr. Mansholt, do you have a conception right now if parties will file their own SOPs or if it will be one SOP or not yet decided?
Well, certainly no party has seen a draft from us yet on our SOP, so they haven't really committed one way or another, but we've had enough, initial conversations of that having some potential.
Okay. Other thoughts on the potential to move that deadline up a few days to allow the commission sufficient time to meet their statutory deadline on decision here? Ms. Roach?
Yes, Commissioner. We haven't, the Affordability Coalition hasn't coordinated any thoughts on this, but I think we're also probably in a similar boat to the settling parties that The additional time to keep the 7th as the date would be appreciated and could help us to confer and get a joint draft out, at least in, on the issues that we can all agree to support together, since it wasn't a comprehensive settlement or stipulation. And then I would also mention that in other recent hearings, it's been just, difficult for the court reporter to crank out transcripts in a super expedited fashion. And so I think that additional time might be helpful to get the parties' transcripts quickly or with enough time to do decent drafting as well.
Other thoughts? Could I get any more support for a proposal of February 5th? Only 2 days before, you still get the weekend. But I'm looking and I'm pretty concerned at the schedule for the commission to turn around a deliberation in this in time.
Could we ask Ms. Boulay what her coming weeks look like?
Sure.
It's Harriet. I'm thinking by the end of next week. Maybe after the weekend. I will send him out as we get him done. I mean, we always.
Yeah, I mean, look, from the party's perspective, it's not possible, and we keep it the 7th, then, then we'll just have to look at that commission deadline and see if that appears possible after all this. Okay.
I just wanted to chime in and say the Energy Office also supports the deadline of the 7th.
Mr. Manchel?
I was just going to say, I just know from the transcriber's perspective, it's difficult to wrap these up in a robust hearing like this, and under a potential of where we don't get the transcripts till the 29th, that would leave us 7 calendar days to finish the whole SOP process, which is, if that's what you want, we'll work towards it, but it will be challenging.
All right, well, let's leave it the 7th, and just recognizing that puts the commission on a very expedited schedule here with regard to the statutory deadline. And, if movement on that is necessary, I guess you'll all be hearing from us in the future on that. So we'll keep it the 7th with that, recognizing that really compressed schedule for the commission. In order to deliberate and having the parties be quite far apart here. I'm not sure what we're seeing for deliberation schedule. Okay, so with that, page limits, any thoughts, concerns, or dialogue on page limits for the SOPs?
The company is comfortable with the default 30-page limit.
Okay, any views from stipulating parties on any necessary change, if any?
I don't think we have any reason to change from the default.
Okay. Okay. Any other matters we need to attend to before I move forward with concluding the hearing? Okay. Hearing none, that concludes the presentation of evidence in this case, and the evidentiary record is now closed, and we are adjourned. Enjoy what remains of your Friday afternoon, everyone.
Thank you. I just want to mention, off the record, I apologize for stumbling around through redirects, but as you may know, the car building was attacked on January 1st. We have not been allowed back in our building. In addition, the 7th floor, which is where the UCA attorneys are located, was the one that had all the damage, the fire, and the sprinklers. So we have not been able to get in to get any of the information we had relevant to any of these cases or anything else, which is why I've been working with 3 screens, and I admit to having technical difficulties of doing that. But I apologize for that inconvenience to everybody. But it has been rather difficult to practice law when your office is totally flooded and no longer available for up to a year. So I just point that out, and I apologize to everyone. Thank you.
Well, I we did not mind as you found what you needed there. Happy to give you the time. So appreciate y'all being able to continue to participate in your full capacity here.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, everyone. With that, enjoy your Friday afternoon. Thank you all so much for your efforts.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, everybody.
Very much.
Thank you.